Just a very obvious question. What's in it for our viewers? Where can they invest in this without finding themselves in a position like they have been in other technology where, quite frankly, growth rates have been exacerbated, the route to profitability has been questionable, and now we've seen a revaluation which has been quite brutal?
Sure. I think we need to make a distinction. And when we look at the reset of the technology sector over the last 6 to 9 months, as a result of inflation and rates and growth, expectations, I would say investing in technology that matters, investing in stuff that is actually going to solve mission critical problems is always going to be a bet that's worth making. I guess in the last few years, we've seen excess in the market where capital has gone into specific verticals that were not, let's say, solving real problems, that didn't have sustainable business models in sort of NFTs and places that maybe were not necessarily where it matters. But when you invest in technologies that are going to enable us to decarbonize, enable us to build resiliency in our physical world, and resiliency is a key aspect today where we see that our housing sector is at risk because of the heat, and our grandparents, our parents, or our kids, their well-being, is the livelihood is at risk because of climate change associated risk. Technologies that are going to enable us to transition in terms of decarbonization and resiliency are key, and are going to become some of the most valuable businesses in this world, because they are going to be there no matter what. They are solving a problem. It doesn't matter where rates are going. It doesn't matter where inflation goes. If you're solving a real problem, if there's a need for what you offer to the market, you will create a substantial business.
Greg, the UK government will publish a national resilience strategy later this year. So it's going to be reviewing effectively some of the failures we've seen across the country as the temperature has soared. Just tell us what sort of retrofitting, what sort of changes are required as we see effectively roads, tarmacs melting, train tracks catching fire.
Sure. The opportunity around retrofitting is massive. And so if you look at the built world overall, there is about $10 trillion a year that needs to be invested in retrofitting technologies for housing, for office, and all sorts of buildings around us between now and 2050. $10 trillion a year. I think everyone needs to understand those amounts. And I think those amounts needs to go into all sorts of things. So if we think about energy efficiency, it's a big topic, not only because we need to transition to a greener economy, but also because we've realized that our sources of energy are becoming a matter of national security, particularly in Europe. So the way we consume our energy is critical. So if you look at the housing stock in the UK, it's probably the single oldest, most obsolete stock of thing in Europe. And we need to invest in stuff that is, let's say, the low-hanging fruit, so intelligent control system, LEDs, and automation in those buildings so that they can operate more efficiently when it comes to heating and cooling. We also need to invest in innovation around insulation materials or heat loss kind of technologies, because one of the big issues with our buildings is the heat transfer is very inefficient. So in winter, our buildings are struggling to stay warm, and in summer, they're struggling to stay cold, which means that in turn, we use more energy to cool or heat them. And so there's a terrible wastage that comes into that. And so more broadly, the government needs to also get involved in making sure that there are the right financing tools, the right kind of incentives for the end users, whether it's, you or I in our homes, or kind of tenants in offices or landlords owning those offices, to make sure that they are in a place where it's worth and to invest the capital into those retrofitting technologies. So there's a number of things that need to go into that. Obviously, with the broader infrastructure, you mentioned it, we can see some of our airports and roads that are struggling with the heat. Right. I think the government needs to play a very key role.